So, as probably most of you have heard, Heritage Auctions sold the $12 million Mickey Mantle last weekend or 2 weekends ago or whenever you end up watching this. But overall, it looks like their total sales ends up being just under $40 million total for the premier auction that they had. So, I mean, some of the other notable cards that they sold, a Brady that I believe sold for $2 million. They sold a Kobe, I think it was a refractor black label, which is a pretty good card. And then they also sold a Topps Wayne Gretzky PSA 10, which is only one of the two that they sold. So, I mean, of those and I think that one sold for 1.2 million. So, granted, you take the 12 million off of this, so you're sitting at 27, and then you take maybe the 2 million off the brace, that's 25, and then I forget what the Kobe sold for, but then you can take the 1.2 off of from the Gretzky, so 24, so roughly $24 million across the board if you're not including some of those top cards. And I mean, it's impressive, honestly, that like you're seeing these big cards. Obviously, I think with an auction like this, you do have to kind of look at it and say like, well, they did have a $12 million card sell, which is like, that's the marketing that they've been doing for a couple months now at this point to get eyes on these auctions. I would be interested to see like how some of the other auctions did this past weekend, with everybody kind of watching that Mickey Mantle. I wonder if there were some undervalued stuff. I didn't really see many people talking about it on Instagram, like that they were getting deals. I mean, I'm sure it's probably not like the National. Like at the National, you're probably going to find some decent deals when it comes to like going on eBay, because a lot of people are bringing their cards to the National. And people who aren't, maybe, or even people who are just trying to sell on eBay and get the money for the National, it's really kind of, you can find some deals if you're really looking for them, which is great. But with this auction, I do wonder if that affected kind of the overall scale, I guess, of kind of how sales went in total. I know Card Ladder does like an index, and this is probably at the top in terms of days. I know they do daily sales, which is a great, I think a good indicator. The one thing that I do also find interesting is that, I mean, I guess I don't see the take as much as I did before, and maybe, honestly, maybe the take doesn't necessarily exist anymore. Like, when I was posting about sports cards on TikTok, like, a year or two ago, I mean, even on Twitter a little bit, on Instagram a little bit, but, like, the narrative that sports cards were dead, or sports cards, like, stink, or the market's gonna go down, it's kind of fluctuated. And I think, honestly, I don't want to say that those people are wrong, because they're not necessarily wrong. But they're also not right. There are cards that have gone down, and I think I saw an interesting graph about the basketball market where it shot up super significantly, and now it's down pretty significantly. But I think that was because it shot up so much because it was so stagnant for so long. And I don't know. I don't think vintage is necessarily like that. I think vintage is more just, you're seeing it kind of steady out a little bit more. You probably did see some of the crazy increases in some vintage cards and then some decreases. But like overall, I think if you're looking at vintage versus, I mean, even stuff from the 90s, stuff from the 80s, it is going to be, I guess, safer. And I hate even saying safer, because it's like, if you're investing in anything, there's obviously a ton of risk. I mean, especially sports cards. I think I definitely got caught up in kind of the hype at the beginning of 2021. I specifically remember making a video on TikTok saying that 2021 was going to be crazier than 2020. Now, I didn't expect that it was going to be kind of an up and down, rather than I was thinking it might just continue to increase, which is a little bit naive, honestly, and I don't regret it necessarily, because at the time it was like the signs weren't there that things were going to slow down. I mean, I guess you could say, things are opening up because of the virus and all that kind of stuff, so maybe people aren't spending as much time on eBay, and, I think it had a lot to do with, like, people buying so much basketball, and then a lot of people, I think, sold it at the peak, and I also think, this is a take that I've had for forever, like, that 2020 into 2021 period was, like, the perfect storm for prospecting, because, like, what ended up happening was players, there was no way to necessarily tell like who was going to be good and who wasn't going to be good. So everybody had potential. You know, the Bol Bols, the Kobe Whites, which I don't even necessarily think Kobe White's a bad player, but like Tyler Harrow, another example. But like these players, all they had was hype. And they continued to have that hype throughout kind of the pandemic. And it really came down to like once it got to a point where there was a little bit of catch up with grading. So you saw some of those cards that were some of the cards that were like the prism cards of some of the top basketball players. Those shot up because I think people saw the other cards and they thought that those secondary cards were kind of always going to go up the same way that they had. Once these players start playing and you see that some of them just aren't as good as, you know, Hall of Famers, and then people kind of start to rethink their process. That's sort of where I think you're seeing some of the corrections come in. So like I said, I would definitely be interested for this card or for this auctions to see if some of the other sales kind of went down or if it was pretty much steady across the board. Like if more people got deals. So I'd be interested, you know, if you're watching this and you got a deal during this weekend, during the weekend this card sold, definitely drop it in the comments because, you know, I don't know one way or the other whether it went up or it went down. Like I don't necessarily know, you know, when there's so many deals, technical deals, I guess deals, but like there's so many ways you could have got cards or deals or whatever kind of throughout that.